Straight all day.
You're now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques all underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called work on your game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is we're going to talk activity versus productivity. And we'll get into that in a second. But before we do that, let me tell everyone a couple things. First of all, I got a daily motivation text I send out for free every single morning. This message is guaranteed to keep you focused, sharp, and on point. Ask anybody who gets it. They'll tell you. All you got to do to text me, all you got to do to get this text is text me at my number 305-384-6894. And every morning when I send out that daily motivation, you shall receive. Secondly, if you want to come to my next live event called Work on Your Game Live, there's no reason why you should not be at this event. It is in Miami. It's beautiful here. It's going to be 80 degrees. You're going to be with me 2 full days, and we're going to be covering mindset, strategy, systems, and execution for your business and personal life, because the frameworks and the things that I share here, you can apply personally and you can apply them in business. Listen, you listen to the show. I mean, do you not apply the things that I talk about here in your personal everyday life? Meaning when you're not at work, and in your business life when you are at work? Okay, since you're nodding your head yes, okay, then you know my work. All right, you know what I'm about. Get your ticket to come to Work on Your Game Live by going to workonyourgame.live. All the information is there. So people have been asking me, what day should I fly in? Where should I get a hotel? All of that stuff is covered on the page. There's an FAQ section there with all the information. Again, workonyourgame.live. And number 3, if you would like to work with me directly in my coaching program, and this is, if you like what you listen to on this show and you think somebody like myself can help look into and give you insights into your biggest challenges, into your biggest areas of growth, where you want to go in your life and your business and your career, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. There are 2 options there. One is to schedule a time to get on a call with me. You'll pick a time on my calendar. You'll fill out a quick application so I know who you are and what you're about, and we'll talk about my coaching program. The other is for you to get access to all of my courses and training materials. That is at workonyourgameuniversity.com. The courses and training materials, that's for material that you can take at your own pace and on your own time. That's all the courses that you hear me talk about. Bulletproof Mindset, ASAP Confidence, my Work on Your Game system, the codified system that I have for how Work on Your Game actually works. 30 Days of Discipline course, the Sell Yourself course, the Tough Enough course, Become a Business Athlete. All of those things are inside of there. 20 courses in there that is at workonyourgameuniversity.com. There's only 2 options on the page. You can't mess it up. So with all that said, let's get into today's topic, which is activity versus productivity. And this is a great follow-up to what we talked about yesterday when we talked about if you are doing business CrossFit. And I want you to understand that there's a big difference between these 2 words, even though they sound very similar. Remember, there was a text message that I sent out probably about, by the time you hear this, probably about a month or 2 ago, where I asked the following question. What are the investments that you are going to make into yourself or your career in the next year? And the kind of responses that I got back extremely disappointed me. In aggregate, the responses I got, not anybody individual's response, but just in aggregate, I got a lot of responses. So I don't always send out question text messages. I get so many responses, and I like to actually read through the responses and reply back to people. But there was way too much vagueness in the responses that I got. In other words, when people responded, people were saying things. The question was, what kind of investments are you going to make? And the kind of stuff that people were saying back was a whole lot of activity-based things, meaning things that you're going to do, but just because you're active doesn't mean you're producing anything. Doesn't mean there's actually any result coming in. I mean, like we talked about yesterday, are you doing CrossFit or are you actually, playing in the game? And when you have vague plans, what happens is you end up with underachieving outcomes. And today I'm going to explain why that's a problem and what you need to do about it. Point number 1, today's topic once again is activity versus productivity. Number 1, vague goals, i.e. unclear goals, not measurable goals, lead to unclear processes. When your goals are not clear, then your process won't be clear. Anytime that your plans, goals, or processes are vague, your results will be less than ideal. And that's probably not a good thing. This is why high-level performers operate by absolutes. High level performers live by absolutes. They say this is exactly what needs to happen, exactly how it needs to happen. They have focus. They do things with extreme clarity. They get clear on exactly what they want. They get clear on exactly how they're going to do it, when, where, and who's going to be involved. And high level performers are not satisfied with vagueness in terms of the answers that they get, in terms of the questions that they ask, or the plans that they have for themselves. The good news about all of this is that if and when you have any of these problems, you can easily solve them by consulting with someone who can help you get clarity instead of just ramming your head into a brick wall trying to figure out how to do everything on your own. I want you all to remember that you're not in school anymore. See, back in school, you had to get all the answers from your own head. When you took a quiz or a test in school, or even the standardized tests like the SATs and the ACTs and finals and midterms and all that stuff, how did the test work? The test worked by the paper was in front of you, all the questions are right there, and you had to come up with all the answers just out of what you could remember in your head or what you actually knew. And we know that since most of us don't remember a damn thing that we learned in school, most of it was just a short-term memory that we had to prove that we had in order to succeed in school. But in real life, there's nothing like that. Think about that. In school, all the answers, you had to just sit there at a desk and you weren't allowed to refer to any other source material, and you had to prove that you quote unquote knew the information. But in real life, are you ever faced with that situation where you just had to sit there and you had to prove that you can pull the information out of your head and you're not allowed to look at anything else? Does that ever happen in your life? No, it doesn't. Any of you who works at a business, when you're faced with a challenge that you don't have an answer to, are you allowed to call somebody and ask them for information? Are you allowed to refer to some text and see if there's some information in there? Are you allowed to read the manual? Are you allowed to look at Google? Are you allowed to hire an outside consultant? Are you allowed to hire a coach? Are you allowed to go to an event and get more information on how to solve a particular problem? Of course you are. In real life, everything is an open book test. So in real life, you can quote unquote cheat and get information from anywhere. Whereas in school, you had to prove that it was all in your head. And many of you are still operating, even though you've been out of school for years, you're operating as if you're still in school. You're trying to do everything by yourself and on your own, when what you should be doing is opening the damn book, metaphorically speaking, and actually acing the open book test that is life by getting information, insights, and help from sources other than your own brain, because you may not have all the information in your brain. When I was in school, I had the information in my brain long enough that I could pass the test, but as soon as the test was over, I forgot all of it. Why? Because I didn't actually know it. It was short-term memory. And many of you are trying to play a long-term game based off of short-term memory, and you're losing right now. Not because you're a loser, but simply because you're operating by a poor strategy, an inaccurate formula that you learned in school. And I understand why it's ingrained in your brain, because you spent 8 hours a day from age 5 to about age, if you graduated college, age 22? So 17 years. You had a full-time job for 17 years of having to memorize everything in your head, and you haven't gotten over it yet. It was ingrained in you as a kid, and studies have shown that things that get ingrained in us as youth tend to stick with us, and they're very hard to undo. Whereas things that we learn like when you're 25 or 37, it's easy for us to get rid of those, because the foundation of what's in our brain, again, the stuff that happened between up to age 22, that stuff is hard to get rid of. So this is why this is such a challenge for so many people to do things in a different way. So when I sent out this text message and I asked people what investments they're going to make into themselves in the next year, you know what? 70% of the answers that I got had nothing to do with actually making an investment. So I will point the finger at myself a little bit and say maybe the wording of my question wasn't clear enough. But 70% of the things that people said had nothing to do with making any kind of investment. That's the start of the problem. And the majority of answers that I did get were people telling me that they're basically going to keep doing more of what they're already doing. That's the long and short of what many of the answers were. Well, Dre, I've been believing in myself more. I've been reading books. I've been listening to your podcast. I've been watching YouTube videos, and I'm gonna keep at it. No, this is just people just saying these things that make you feel good, but are they actually going to help you get to where you want to go? See, the problem with doing more of what you're already doing is that many people aren't already getting the outcomes that they want. So if you keep doing what you're already doing, you're going to keep having the same problem. You're going to keep being in the same spot, not getting what you want. And this is the problem that many people have, is that they don't even understand that they're setting themselves up for failure because of a inaccurate formula that was taught to you by some people who ain't qualified to tell you what I'm telling you today, i.e. all your teachers and professors when you went to school. Moving on to point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is activity versus productivity. Number 2, when your process is unclear but your motivation is there, and this is what a lot of people who responded to my text message had, you got the motivation, you have the desire to achieve, but you don't have the process. What happens is you get a lot of activity but no results. And the result of that is what we call hustle porn. Anybody know what hustle porn is? I did a reel about this on my Instagram. Probably by the time you hear this, it'll have been a month or so since I posted it. But I talked about this in episode 1881, a vaccine for hustle porn. Episode 1881. Hustle porn is when you are basically doing as much hard work as you possibly can, as if the hard work itself is the ends when it's actually only the means. All right, that's why it's hustle porn. All right, as they say about porn, the thing about porn is that it feels good while you're doing it, but in the end, you're only fucking yourself. All right, so this is what happens when you have a lot of motivation but no process. Hustle porn. But because you're working so hard, you're hustling, you fool yourself into thinking that you should just do more of that and things will eventually work out. Again, this is what you were taught in school. This is what your parents told you. This is what some of the hustle porn that you consume on YouTube has you thinking. And hopefully you don't think I'm giving you this, but maybe some of you get it from me as well, is this idea that, all right, I'm already working hard, so if I just keep working hard or work a little bit harder or run a little bit faster or focus a little bit stronger, things are eventually going to work out. This is wrong, folks. This is an inaccurate formula. Stop doing this. Go directly to jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. This is the biggest lie that the American system of education and hustle porn and success preaching has taught all of us, that if you just work harder or even harder than you already are, then eventually everything will work out. This is an inaccurate formula for success, people. Did everybody hear me? This is also why motivation sells so well. This is why I call my text the daily motivation, because everybody gets it. All right, people sign up for, daily motivation. Yeah, I want more motivation. People sign up for it. So listen, I will use it when it's necessary, but see, I hook you in by telling you it's daily motivation, but then once I get your attention, now I tell you, okay, motivation is not what you actually need. All right, so I baited and switched all of you who get my daily motivation. I'm admitting to it. I baited and switched you into getting you into my daily motivation, so I can give you the truth about what you actually need, which is not motivation. All right, motivation is not what you need. I call it that because everybody understands it, but that is not what you need. You don't need more motivation. What you need is a system and a strategy and a process for actually achieving your outcomes. And motivation is not a system, it is not a strategy, and it's not a process. Everybody follow me? Okay, so forgive me for baiting and switching you into getting that daily motivation text message. All right, if you can convince people that they just need to get themselves more activated, motivated, hyped up, and focused in order to achieve success, you have a very long career in pretty much any industry. And there are a bunch of people who this is all they do for a living. They just teach people that if you just get more hyped up, more motivated, more activated, then you will be a more successful person. You just need to get yourself more hyped up. You just got to get more excited. You just got to get more focused. Oh, no, the problem is not that you're doing what you're doing. It's just you got to run a little bit faster on that treadmill. Then everything's going to work out. There are a bunch of people who will preach this to you and they will sell you material that teaches you, quote unquote, teaches you how to do more of what you're already doing. Just get more motivated, more hyped, more focused. And this is garbage. And there's a large population of people who this is all they do for a living. And listen, they make good money. Why? Because there are so many people who have been taught this inaccurate formula and they're living their entire lives based off of it. And if I was a less scrupulous individual, I could build a whole career just on that, just on teaching people to get more activated, motivated, hyped up, and focused. And if you just do that, everything's going to work out. But I choose to operate with integrity and tell you that that is not the solution to your problem, even though there are some people who now aren't going to listen to me because they have been convinced that that's the solution to their problem. But get them about a year or 5 and they'll realize that they had the wrong formula, and eventually they'll find their way back here. All roads lead back to Work on Your Game Incorporated. Okay, this is a well-proven truth that there are people out there who will sell you this belief and motivation, all that stuff. That's all you need to be successful. The problem is that a motivated idiot is still an idiot. Okay, now I'm not calling you an idiot, but I want you to get the point. When you don't have a proper strategy or a system to execute that strategy, then you are essentially an idiot in trying to achieve your outcome. You're an idiot in that space because you don't know what you're doing, even though you're excited. Again, motivated idiot is still an idiot. So it doesn't matter how motivated you are, because actually the more motivated you are when you don't have a process or a system, the more dangerous you are to your own success. In the basketball world, I built a reputation for being a person who would keep it real and honest with basketball players. When an athlete would come to me with a question, let's say on some social platform, on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, or in the comment section to a YouTube video, basketball players came to know, hey, you can ask Dre a question and he'll keep it real with you and tell you what it is. And I could basically tell them the truth, surmising about their game, what they needed to do to take ownership of their situation, just based off the things that they would say in their comment. And most of the time, it was something around the concept that they needed to work on their game in some way and improve on themselves in some way so that they could stop blaming their teammates, coaches, parents, etc., the weather, their height, their gender, their nationality, where they live. These are the common excuses I would hear from players within their questions. They wouldn't always say it in that direct way, but I could see it embedded in their question that their excuse was some externality, something that had nothing to do with them specifically. If you let these basketball players tell it, everything they were doing is perfect. It's just my parents, my coach, my teammate, my nationality, where I'm from, the town that I live in. There's no basketball court for 33 hours away from me. That's the only reason I'm not good at basketball. Dre, what should I do about it? I talked about externalities in episode 1879, by the way. And whenever players would come to me with something like that, I would tell them the truth. Like, listen, you gotta kill the excuses. You gotta kill the excuses. You can't keep blaming your circumstances on things outside of yourself. The problem with that is, even if you believe you're right, even if you can prove it, quote unquote, is that now you're still in the same spot because you have no power, because your problem is based on something that you don't control. And if your problem is always based on something that you don't control, that means you're powerless. And when you're powerless, you can't do anything about your situation except sit there and allow that externality to have its way with you. And I don't think anybody listening to this wants to be that type of person. But invariably, when I would respond to people, and I would do this publicly in the comments and things like that to basketball players, and I do it these days too with people like yourselves, professionals, but with basketball players, it was a higher volume of comments and questions, simply because they were usually more simple situations. Whereas when I talk to professionals these days, the situations are much more layers deeper. It isn't as simple as a YouTube comment. But with basketball, it pretty much was. But here's what would happen. Because there were so many comments for me to respond to, and I did respond, invariably, some well-meaning individual would come in and try to offer their 2 cents behind my comment and offer their comment. And they will offer the player basically some words of encouragement, basically telling the player that, hey, if you just keep working hard and believing in yourself, everything will eventually work out. Or they would say something like, well, they would use some reference, or, oh, you're 17 and just starting basketball. Well, this player who's in the NBA, he didn't start playing until he was 17. Things worked out for him. Or you got cut when you were this year. Well, this player got cut when he was this year. So, if you just keep working on yourself and believing in yourself, everything's going to work out. This is bullshit, and it does not work. It didn't work in the basketball days. It does not work today. Actually, no, let me correct myself. It does work to sell people on whatever it is you want to sell to them, but it doesn't work to actually help you get better. Let me say that more accurately. So if your goal is to make people feel good, but not have them actually get any results, in other words, you want to sell them candy and potato chips, all you gotta do is just tell them things that make them feel good, which is motivation, get more activated, get more hyped up, get more focused. If you can just figure out a way to package that, you can make a good amount of money selling to idiots who just want to be motivated. But if you want to help people actually achieve results, you can't feed them candy and potato chips. You got to get them some whole foods. You got to give them some meat and potatoes that sticks to their ribs. If I just want to tell people things that make them feel good, I could do that just bullshitting people. I could. I have the ability to articulate to which I could do that for a living. But I'd rather tell you things that will actually help you do good, and that's a conscious choice. Moving on to point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is activity versus productivity. Number 3, if you have vague, unclear goals and processes, and this is basically 95% of the population, by the way, so if I'm talking about you, don't feel bad because you got a lot of company. Get help and stop trying to do something that you're not an expert at. If you're not expert level at coming up with clear processes and systems for achieving your desired outcome, stop trying to come up with clear processes and systems for achieving your desired outcome. Why? Because the great thing about the internet is that you can access pretty much anyone, and anyone who knows what they're doing and knows how to codify, in other words, explain what they do, they will gladly help you do the same thing that they know how to do. You borrow their brain And then when it's time for you to sell something, other people can borrow your brain. Might not be the same person, but they can borrow your brain and you can borrow whoever's brain that you need to borrow from. All right, this is what we call the economy. I buy some bread from the local grocer. He takes the money and he buys some shelving for his store. The guy who makes the shelving, he buys some, what does the shelving guy buy? He spends some money on some machinery that helps him build the shelves. The machine company, they take the money that they made from the shelving guy and they buy some more concrete from the concrete people. Concrete people take the money that they got from the shelving guy and they hire more workers. The workers take that money and they go buy access to my Bulletproof Mindset course, so they get tickets to Work on Your Game Live, or they go get their free copy of The Third Day by going to thirddaybook.com. I take that money and what do? I go buy some bread from the local grocery store. You see, that's the economy. The dollar just circulates. But what happens is when we get recessions and we get depressions is when people are not circulating their money. They're trying to do everything on their own. The problem is you're mediocre or worse than mediocre at the thing that you're trying to do on your own. So first of all, you're not getting the results. Secondly, you're holding on to that money, which becomes less valuable every single day because of inflation. Now, i.e. the value of that dollar, that dollar has less power today than it had yesterday. This is just a economic fact. Everybody, most of you probably already understand that. If you don't, look it up, read about it, or you just take my word for it. And then you are still not making yourself a more valuable individual. Therefore, you can't make more money. So you're holding on to money because you're like, well, I don't want to lose my money. The thing is, you're worth less money because time is moving on, but you're not making yourself a more valuable individual in charge of jobs at which you are mediocre or worse. You see how all of this works in a cycle? I want to just let that sink in, everything that I just said. No high achiever keeps themselves in charge of a job at which they are mediocre. That's the reason why they're high achievers. Now, mediocre people keep themselves in charge of jobs at which they're mediocre. That's why they're mediocre. High achievers offload things that they're not great at. All right, that's why they become good. Not because they're so much better than everybody else, simply because they only do stuff that they're great at. So when you see them, it looks like, damn, everything they do, they're so good at. It's because they only do things they're good at. And guess what? Most people ain't good at about maybe 2 or 3 things. Yes, 2 or 3. So if you're doing 20 things right now, you're mediocre at most of the stuff you're doing. See, many people try to be superhuman at things that you're mediocre at, or you just try to do things you're mediocre at and you fail at it because you're mediocre. I mean, who pays for mediocre? Do you buy things that are mediocre? That's my question to you. Do you pay money for mediocrity? I talked about this in episode 352. No one pays for mediocre. So any job that you're doing right now in your business at which you know you are mediocre, and here's how you can know you're mediocre. So let me give you all a framework. A simple litmus test for this. If you could not take that skill and sell it in the open marketplace for money, then you are not good at it. I'm gonna take a sip of water while that one sinks in. I want you to take any skill that you are doing at work right now and ask yourself, if you went into the open market and you had to sell that skill for money, could you sell it? Would anybody pay money for your ability to do X? If the answer is no, that means you are mediocre or worse, and you should not be knowing that skill because it's worthless. I mean, we just proved it, right? You couldn't sell it, you couldn't make any money from it. So what is it worth? Remember what I talked about in my episodes on the 12 Work on Your Game commandments, starting at episode 2219. It's a 4-part series. The open marketplace commandment states the following. Your value is whatever the open marketplace is willing to pay for it. Meaning, if you take something out into the open marketplace and nobody's willing to pay for it, then the value of that thing is 0. 0. Not $1, not 1,000, not what you say it is, not what you believe it is. No, 0. Your open marketplace value is what the open marketplace will be willing to pay for what you're offering. If nobody will pay for it, then it's worthless. By definition. Everybody follow me here? I may do a whole episode just on this concept alone. If you can emotionally accept the point that I just gave you, it can change everything in your life in a very short period of time, because what you're going to start doing is firing yourself from jobs at which you shouldn't be working. All right, this is really what a whole lot of people need to be doing. You need to remove yourself from jobs that you simply should not be doing. The problem for all of us is our hard wiring. This stuff has been hardwired into us since we were kids, and it's very hard to undo or change hard wiring. Biggest waste of resources that human beings have is thinking that you need to, or that you can figure everything out on your own and then trying to do it and failing. And before you know it, 10 years went by. Nobody succeeds at figuring out everything on their own. There's not a single human on this planet who has figured everything out on their own. The smartest people, or the people who you think are the smartest, what they simply done is leverage other people's brains more often than you have. People who you think are smarter than you, they simply leverage other people's brains more than you. I talked about this in episode 2084. When and how to fire yourself. Some of you, a lot of you actually, need to listen to episode 2084. When and how to fire yourself. Because many of you are doing jobs in which, if this was the open marketplace, you would have been got fired from. But because you're in charge of the marketplace, you're keeping yourself employed. And what I heard a guy named Dan Kennedy call this is sanctioned incompetence. Sanctioned incompetence. In other words, you are incompetent at a job, yet you allow yourself to keep doing it. And guess who's paying the most for this incompetence? You are. Because your life is your business. It's your business that's suffering from your mediocrity. It's your life that's suffering from your mediocrity, yet you allow it to continue because you won't fire yourself from a job that you shouldn't be doing. Again, listen to episode 2084 where I explain this even more. Nobody figures everything out on their own, folks. Smart people, or at least people who appear to be so smart, the reason that they're so smart is because they're using like 30 people's brains at the same time, and why someone else may appear to be mediocre is because they're using their own brain to do 30 different jobs. Everybody get it? I hope this is getting through this. Hope this is getting through to at least one person who's listening to this here today. And the smart person, the successful quote unquote person, they get all the credit for the success that they've created. So it looks like they're doing everything through their own individual genius. But I want you to understand, this could not be further from the truth. There is no person on this planet who is just individually so amazing at everything. All right, you know why the audio for these episodes sounds so crisp and clear? Not because I'm a great audio engineer. I'm not an audio engineer at all. I have zero audio engineering abilities. I got an audio team. Nico's my audio guy. They make this stuff sound good. All right, they get it up on the podcasting apps and the platform. All I do is record it. Now, I mean, I think my voice sounds pretty good. I got good content, good ideas and all that, but I'm not doing all the work. Now, you listen to the show and say, I love Dre's podcast. I get the credit for it, but I'm not doing all the stuff. You borrow the brains of other people. All right. Elon Musk created Tesla. Any of you own a Tesla or ever seen a Tesla, or any of you want a Tesla but don't have one yet? Right, now you give Elon Musk the credit for the Tesla, but I guarantee you Elon Musk ain't in the factory putting the wheels on the axles of that car. He ain't painting the car. He ain't putting the glass in. He's not making sure that the engine works. He's not test driving the car. He's not doing none of that. He just gets credit for all of it. And so when you say Tesla, you think of him, but there's a whole bunch of people whose brains he is borrowing in order to make all that stuff work. You could be doing the same thing. You don't have to do it on the same scale as him, but you not only can you should be doing the same thing. You can start where you are right now. All right, this is not, oh, I got to make a certain amount of money. No, that's bullshit. That's an excuse that a lot of people use. I just don't have the money, or I don't have the whatever excuse you're using. Kill the excuses. All right, I told you externalities are not excuses. I already gave you that episode. Let's recap today's class, which is activity versus productivity. Point number 1. Vague goals equal unclear processes. Anytime your plans and processes are vague, your results will be less than ideal. This is why high performers live by absolutes, focus, and extreme clarity. They are not satisfied with anything that is vague. You should not be trying to do everything by yourself like you did in school. In life, it is an open book test. You should be looking for the answers from somewhere other than yourself. Point number 2. When your process is unclear but the motivation is there, you get high activity but no results. Stop doing this. The American system of education taught you this idea of hustle porn, and people just tell you you just need to get more motivated and more activated, and all of a sudden everything's going to work out. No, a motivated idiot is still an idiot. An idiot in this sense is what I mean is a person who doesn't know what they're doing, but they're all motivated and activated to do it. And a lot of people will sell you this your entire life as long as you keep paying. It is bullshit and it does not work. So I'm trying to save you some money. Take that money and redirect it towards something that's actually going to help you get better. Investing in yourself. And number 3, if you have vague, unclear goals and processes like 95% of the population does, get help and stop trying to be an expert at something that you're not an expert at. No high achiever tries to become an expert at something they're not an expert at. They know that they're good at maybe 2 or 3 things, and they focus on those 2 or 3 things, and they strategize if they can't do it right now. And if they can do it right now, then they actually offload everything else that they're not an expert at. This is what the smartest people do. They leverage the brains of other people. Now, they may get the credit because they're the face of the thing that they do, but they leverage everybody else's brains and skills and abilities in order to achieve the outcome that they want to achieve, while they focus on the 2 or 3 things that they are amazing at. Steve Jobs was not amazing at building phones. He never built a phone. He was amazing at marketing and selling the idea. He got a whole bunch of other people behind him. Read the books on Steve Jobs. They built the phones. All he did was market and promote it. He got the attention because he was the face on the screen. And that's completely all right. So everybody doesn't want to be on the front lines, and that's okay. I want you to understand that you need to be leveraging the brains of other people so you can create the outcomes that you want to create. Stop trying to do everything by yourself, because you ain't good at everything. All that said, text me, get my daily motivation straight to your phone every single day. My number is 305-384-6894. Second, get your ticket to Work on Your Game Live. I know you've been thinking about it. I know some of you have been saying to yourselves, well, I had somebody text me and say, well, Dre, where's the event at? Because I live in California. Look, we got planes. All right, so I don't care where you live. All right, if you ever been on an airplane before, or you ever seen one before, you don't even have to be on one before. This could be your excuse to get on one. You ever seen an airplane before, or is there an airport that you can get to? Okay, get your ticket to Work on Your Game Live. Come to Miami, February 3rd and 4th here, so I don't care where you live. You don't have to live in Florida. Anywhere you live that is accessible by plane, get a ticket and come here. Workonyourgame.live is where you get your ticket. And third, get into my coaching program and get access to all of my self-learning training programs by going to workonyourgameuniversity.com. Again, that's workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre all day.